Yo, there's something beautiful about Bearcats basketball. High flying.
Kenyon with a jam.
Shot denying.
Miles rejected.
There's just an energy that comes with the Cats. A rich history built on toughness.
And Mick Cronin looks like he wants a technical.
A bring-your-own-lunch pail mentality. For a long time, UC was the hunted.
I felt that we couldn't lose.
I think it's time the Bearcats do a little hunting of their own.
Once y'all done with them, send them to me, man. You know what I mean? We can put them on the court. Keep that Bearcat thing going.
I am fired up.
Takes it all the way. Oh! It's going to be Little.
I wonder how Steve Logan would be over in Afghanistan or somewhere. I bet he'd be pretty poised. He just does not get rattled.
Van Exel, he'll cut it loose. Watch out. Stevenson cuts it back. Oh! Kilpatrick outruns everybody. Johnson, the exclamation point.
We've been dealt the king of heartbreak over and over again.
Rozier. Smith and
Everything they worked for was undone on one play.
But I see the light. The Cats are back. Lukosius, open three, got it! Oh, baby! Welcome to the only live Bearcats postgame show on YouTube. This is Chatterbox Bearcats. All right, what's Gucci, everyone? Welcome into Chatterbox Bearcats. We got Nick Niehaus with us tonight. Houdini had scheduled a loss before the game. How dare he? And Wes Miller said, Houdini, you're an idiot. There's death, there's taxes, and there's Wes Miller in March. Not necessarily, but I will say this. Would it not shock you, Niehaus, if the Cats made a little bit of a run here? You know, just a little bit of false hope in the most Cincinnati way possible. Beat Iowa State and gave us some hope heading into Houston because they look good, man. 87-68, they take down Oklahoma State. We got a lot to get into, but that was a completely different team than the one that showed up Saturday.
Yeah, I was trying to tell myself, slow down. We do play Iowa State tomorrow. It's not going to be as easy as Oklahoma State, but you're right. We looked really good. I think that was the second most amount of steals in a Big 12 conference tournament game. They ended up with 16 or 18. I need to check the tape, but a really good defense leading to the most fun final 6 minutes of a game that I can remember. I mean, there must have been like 7 alley-oops to Dan Skillings, to Dillon Mitchell, the putback that Dillon Mitchell had on a Skillings miss. It was all awesome. It was the Duncan Bearcats like we saw in the non-con, Chuck. I mean, we finally saw it in the final 6 minutes of today's game against Oklahoma State in a going away victory. So it was fun to see. But yeah, like you said, it might be a little bit like Cincinnati to kind of go on a little bit of run when it doesn't mean anything. But I just can't see it against Iowa State. I really
Here's
can't.
the thing, man. It's a catch-22. Shout out Steve Logan. Because you said when it doesn't mean anything, it absolutely means something. I mean, if NC State taught us anything last year, and Kevin Keats, no longer the head coach of NC State, so he takes them to the Final Four, and they're just like, screw this. Thank you for the Final Four. The buyout, take all the money you want. We want a new leadership direction at NC State. But we've seen crazier things. Hell, I remember back in the day, I think Georgia was like a 14 seed in the NCAA tournament. I didn't even know Power 5 teams, Power 4 teams could be 14 seeds in the NCAA tournament, but I'm pretty sure they had a losing record during the regular season. This UC team is talented. They played their best basketball of the season today, literally. They looked really good. And I mean, there's always a chance. That's the positive spin of the catch-22. The negative spin is, God bless, this is frustrating because you just see the Jackal and the Hyde from game to game. I mean, they played the same Oklahoma State team on Saturday away from Fifth Third Arena. They looked awful in that game against OK State. And then they turn right back around and just beat the living breaks off them. And that's what we feel like we should have seen a lot more this season, right? You go on the road, you lose to Utah, and then you come back home and you even with Gabe Madsen going nuclear, you still take down Utah. You lay a dud at BYU, you come back home, you beat them. You just wish there was a little more consistency, a lot more consistency with this team. And I think that's the most frustrating part of the season, is that I do believe somewhere deep down, this is an NCAA tournament team, maybe not one that was going to the second weekend like we thought at the beginning of the year, but this is an NCAA tournament team. Their coach and the players and everyone involved was just not able to get on the same page. And now they've put themselves in a near impossible situation of winning 5-5, but they've got the first leg. We've seen crazier things. Let's go through the stat sheet, Niehaus. Dillon Mitchell. If you didn't want Dillon Mitchell returning next year, you're an idiot. 18 points, 15 rebounds, 5 assists. This guy has way too much talent to give up on him. That's my number one priority this offseason, is getting Dillon Mitchell to return, along with obviously hitting the portal very, very hard. Another priority is making sure Day Thomas returns to Cincinnati, because he's really turned it on in the second half of the season. He had 21 to lead the way, 2 of 3 from deep, 7 of 12 from the floor. Baby Zion, Josh Reed, 8 of 12, 2 of 3 from deep, 19 points. There was a point in the game where he was just backing down defenders and using the window. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy with the little turnaround? Makes no sense. And then Dan Skillings, I'm so wishy-washy on Dan Skillings, but I wouldn't mind seeing Skillings return. And that's going to be a hot take. A lot of people say you're crazy. 13-8. He's been playing his best basketball the last few weeks. He clearly was injured at some point. I mean, he went from wearing that Transformers knee brace to taking it off. And since he took it off, he's looked much better. And I just think we've seen enough from Dan Skillings to where he can be an effective basketball player, especially off the bench, to where I think you retain him. Now, obviously the financials get involved, Niehaus. You gotta wane off other coaches that come in and try to pluck your players with X, Y, and Z amount of money. I get that. But in terms of just like scholarships, old-fashioned basketball, those 4 right there, you definitely want those 4 returning. And I said 4 or 5 if you include Josh Reed.
Yeah, Dan plays hard. I'll give you that. I mean, I know some people, like you said, it's a hot take. Some people might come after you for that take after the year we've had, but he plays hard, and we saw that today. You mentioned in your opening monologue how like they
It's
just
not,
can't.
Niehaus, it's not like the craziest priority that I have. Like, you have to retain Dan Skillings, whatever you do. But if Dan Skillings wants to come back and rectify some of the poor basketball that he played this season, like I'm not gonna. Who's to say? I mean, this season we gave a scholarship to CJ Frederick. Like,
yeah,
he played like 45 minutes all season.
I think the thing with him is that if you can get him to play within a role, then you can allow him to come back. It's when he gets outside of whatever he's supposed to do, and he looks like the guy at the inflatable thing in front of a used car dealership, right? Like, that's what he looks like. We call him Bambi. So he has loud and ugly turnovers, but when he just plays hard, and he eats on the glass as well when he's playing hard. So yeah, it's not priority 1, but it's hard to ask a guy who plays that hard like today, like we saw Dan against Oklahoma State today, to leave the program. But yeah, there's a salary cap to this all. So there's definitely that you have to consider. In your opening monologue, you said, not everybody puts it together. And I was just going to say, like, the thing that was exciting about the win against Oklahoma State today was that it wasn't our supposed best players playing the best. Dillon Mitchell and Josh Reed in the first half, that was the dynamic duo. Jizzle, Seamos, and Dan in that first half were nowhere to be found. Seamos, that needs to be studied on what has happened to Seamos.
Yeah, it's over. He had a real good junior season. He had a real good non-conference, but I think at this point you try to find someone else to eat up his minutes because he's not being effective. I mean, he's not even giving you gravity on the floor. He's 0 of 6 from the floor, 0 of 4 from deep. He had 1 rebound, 1 assist. Not necessarily a good defender, played 20 minutes in the game. I think you find someone else to take his minutes. Obviously, the most likely option would be Rayvon Griffith, but it doesn't seem like Wes is really going that route. So you just play guys like Josh Reed 33 minutes, which is what they did today.
Well, in Seamos, 0 for 6, but also one of the easiest layups ever to be found on a college basketball game that he bricked. And then 2 wide open threes. It's like the wide open shots are not going down for Seamos. So I just don't know what happened to him. I know I've texted you guys before where I hate, and you know what, it used to work. Last year it worked. I hate the curl screen at the top of the key where his back is to the basket, turns around, catches a pass, and hits a 3. That's a hard shot. But it seemed to work for him last year. It's not working this year. And the wide open ones aren't either. So I don't know what's happened with Seamos, but yeah, like you said, Day Thomas, Josh Reed, Dillon Mitchell, those are the 3 that I look at that I want back on this team for sure next year. Now, there's not going to be anybody that I am going to lose sleep over if we lose them, but those 3 are going to be the top 3 for me.
Wes Miller, we'll give him the praise because there was every reason for this team to just lay an egg and finish off the season like that Mick year where they lost to DePaul in the Big East tournament. You're like, this is freaking rock bottom. And they came out and they showed fight. They scored 87 points and they did it in a lot of different ways. They shot the basketball well, 47% from the floor. The 3-pointers, they were only 6 of 23. I swear when I was watching, they hit every 3 they took. So I don't know if I just turned the game off for 17 missed threes in a 5-minute span, but I didn't see many missed shots. But again, it's Cincinnati. 26% from the floor is par for the course with this basketball team. UC turned it over 16 times. They forced Oklahoma State into 24 turnovers. And now we enter a game, win or go home. There is absolutely no chance that this team has any NCAA tournament aspirations unless they win 5-5. I don't care if you beat Iowa State and Houston back-to-back. It's not going to get the job done. 1, the committee doesn't value these tournaments like regular season games. And 2, 7-13 in the Big 12. Unfortunately, the metrics do not say that it's the SEC. And because of that, Cincinnati needs 5 in 5 games. The good news, bad news. I guess the bad news. We'll start there. You got Iowa State. They're a freaking wagon. The good news, last time they played Iowa State in Ames, they played them pretty tough. I mean, aside from Day Thomas fouling out and Jizzle James being in foul trouble and eventually fouling out, we really thought that they had a chance to hang around and fight in the second half. And look, I don't know if it creeps into the mentals of these players, but UC has nothing to lose. Iowa State's gearing up for the NCAA tournament. How does that psyche factor in? UC looked pretty loose today. Again, Oklahoma State had nothing to lose, so I don't know if you can compare apples to apples there. With that being said, you may just catch Iowa State sleepwalking. I don't think you're going to catch Iowa State, Houston, and then potentially Texas Tech back-to-back sleepwalking, but you may catch Iowa State sleepwalking, gearing up for the NCAA tournament.
Well, Chuck, correct me if I'm wrong. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if we take down Iowa State, I think we have BYU, right? So that's obviously a winnable game, considering we already beat them once. But you mentioned the playing hard against Iowa State. That was a game that we thought we got hosed. The Jizzle's 4th and 5th foul. I mean, he was going nuclear, and then those were ghost fouls. So I texted this to you guys. If we hadn't lost the 2 regular season games, the last 2 regular season games, I'd be feeling much better. And you point to all these losses that they had throughout the season where it's like, oh, at Utah, at home against West Virginia, where it looked like they were high schoolers out there. All those games, yeah, they were terrible. Don't get me wrong. It's the last 2 regular season games where I can't get excited about this Oklahoma State win, because had they taken care of those 2, we'd be gearing up for a must-watch tomorrow at 12:30 p.m. against Iowa State, because if we win that, we're probably in the tournament. So it was tough, but I don't know. I think there's definitely something to be said. You got to remember, these are college kids. So some of these guys' seasons are going to be over. Their careers are going to be over in America. Like Seamos, he's not going to the NBA. Aziz, not going to the NBA. So there's definitely something to be said there. And on the road, we matched up pretty well. So, without a Jizzle James 4th and 5th foul that didn't exist, who knows? Maybe they steal one. So I would be feeling good, but I can't stop thinking about those 2 last regular season games.
What if the computers were right all along? Because you remember the BPI, the KMI, whatever the hell metrics we're looking at nowadays, that was the system that said that Cincinnati was a good basketball team to begin the season. Like, no matter what, we were favored in games we shouldn't have been favored in. Spreads were fishy as hell. They made no sense. I mean, what were we like -1 against Kansas or +1 against Kansas? Like some of the spreads early in the season did not make sense. And it's because the computers believed that the team we had was actually good. What if, and this is just Cincinnati sports luring me in. It's what they do. What if West pushed something that they played Dr. Dodgeball, not just dodgeball. They played Dr. Dodgeball, and Josh Reed was the doctor. And now all of a sudden this team has flipped. I don't know. I highly doubt it. Most likely they go out against Iowa State tomorrow and lose by double digits, but you never know. This team does have some talent. And if you get Dillon Mitchell scoring 18 and grabbing 15 and Day Thomas lighting it up from the floor, hitting the mid-range, and Josh Reed being an effective scorer, and Skillings all of a sudden playing like 2023, 2024 Dan Skillings, I'm not saying you're going to win 5 in 5 games, but hey, give me one more. Let's keep making it interesting. Let's keep doing these shows for as long as we can, because we're not doing live streams after the Crown.
Well, well, that's the perplexing thing about this team. And even Fran Fraschilla said it on today's broadcast, where it's like individually, UC should have a good team. Like individually, the talent is there. Each player individually it brings something to the table, but it hasn't meshed. So yeah, if we get Dillon Mitchell, what he did today against Oklahoma State, if we get that Dillon Mitchell tomorrow, then we get Seamos of last year, then we get Dan of last year, and Jizzle James of that stretch in February this year. Sure, they can win. They have individual talent. That's never been the question. It's just, and nobody knows it. Like nobody can figure out why. Like why, Chuck? Like I'm not a college basketball coach. I don't know why they're not any good, but individually they are, like all these pieces. So, you can't expect 8 of 12 from the floor from Josh Reed against Iowa State tomorrow. We've seen what happens when, the defense ramps up a little bit. Again, you have to remember, like, this is Oklahoma State. They're a below 500 team. Josh Reed got some free 3-point shots up. One just wasn't even close to being on the broadcast. It was such a rainbow, and it fell in. Like, I don't even think it touched the net. But it's individually, like, it's there. The talent's there. It's just, and I think that's why it's such a frustrating year.
Yeah, they're not terrible. That's why it's so frustrating, because they are truly, when they're playing just mediocre basketball for their standards, they're an NCAA tournament team. They're a low seed, a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. We've seen it in games against tournament teams like Baylor. We saw them beat the brakes off BYU. We saw them hang around with West Virginia, quite frankly, blow that game. We saw them play tough against Houston and against Kansas State. They had a tie game with Arizona with a minute to go in the game after falling behind by like 16, 18 points. Terrible teams don't go down by 18 to Arizona and fight their way back in it and give themselves a chance with a minute to go. Inconsistent teams do that. And that's the most frustrating thing. And that's why we keep pointing to Wes, is because at some point it falls on the coach when you feel like you have the talent. We said at the beginning of the year, Niehaus, we thought it would be an impossibility. But we said if this team does not make the NCAA tournament, it is a fireable offense. It is an epic failure, and they're in position to miss the NCAA tournament. And I just don't understand it. You have a McDonald's All-American. You have a honorable mention All-Conference and Dan Skillings from a season ago. You have Aziz, who, at the very least, he's a legit 7 feet that can block shots and finish the lob. You have Jizzle, who at times, he's honorable mention All Big 12. You have glue guys like Reed and ballers like Day that play well enough to the point where Kelvin Sampson's getting in his ear saying, "You got a nice game, son. You got a nice game." You got, Gatorade All-Americans like Tyler Betsy and Seamos Leos, who was scoring 30 a game last year. So it is the curious case, because you go up and down the roster and you feel like they have enough to get the job done, but they just squandered so many damn opportunities that at the end of the day, they are who they are. You go back to Arizona, that's one they let get away. You go back to an opportunity against Kansas late where they just stunk down the stretch. You go to Utah on the road where they had it. You go to Kansas State at home where they had it. West Virginia at home that they had it. They literally only needed probably two of those games. But I would like to think that if it went different earlier in the year, that 4-game losing streak or multiple 4-game losing streaks or the last loss of the season against Oklahoma State, they don't happen because of the confidence factor. So much of this is derived off confidence. Case in point, Seamos Leos, man. Like, that is the only way to describe what's happened to Seamos this season. It's just he lost his shot. Defenses kind of figured out how to guard him. And he was going to the well last year with that, little float game and quite frankly, double option, where he could go with the lob to Aziz or where he could float it up and in. And that's just been nowhere to be found this season. And there's been no space around the perimeter. And it's just the story of the season, man. We've been talking about this for a long time. And you're saying, Chuck, where's all the energy? You just took down Oklahoma State by 19. It'll be a different story if they take down Iowa State. We'll be having some fun on the postgame show. But this is just one of those mandatory. We come out, we tell you what happens, and we get ready for the next game.
Yeah, and one big storyline for the past 2 years that we actually haven't talked about much in the past few months is the lack of non-con competition. Like, that is something that, if we had one, say we're in Maui or, another major MTE around Thanksgiving, and we had 1 or 2 wins to hold our hat on, neutral site, we're probably not in this position, let alone we're actually battle tested for Big 12 play, because Dayton's on the bubble, on the outside of the bubble looking in. Xavier, somehow they're going to make the tournament. I don't even know how, but you beat those 2 teams. Those are the best 2 wins that you can hang your hat on in the non-con. Nobody's talking about that the past couple months. You have no legit competition to get you ready for the Big 12. And we said it preseason, Chuck, the first 4 games of the Big 12 was a gauntlet, and it proved to be. We went 0-4. We weren't ready for it. So I just don't know. I think that is a huge missed opportunity, getting a good game in there or 2 in the non-con, getting ready, having, let alone winning it and having that on your resume. That's my thing I've been upset with and I've thought about recently in the last couple of weeks. But yeah, like you mentioned, Seamos, man, I don't know what in the world happened to him.
It's all a domino effect. It's all derived from confidence. Truly, if they beat Kansas State that first game of the Big 12 slate, I think it looks completely different. I don't know if you go 2-2 in that 4-game stretch. You may just go 1-3, but I do believe that those lulls later in the season, that home dud against West Virginia, it doesn't happen. There was just so much toxic, negative energy protruding from everywhere, right? From the fan base, from the players, from everywhere.
We were getting booze. There were booze all over the place. Pretty
much all season, there was booze at home. It was just an ugly season that is not quite done yet. Cincinnati gets the win, 87-68 over Oklahoma State. The Duncan Bearcats were back for 1 more game. We hope 2 more games. It's Oklahoma State. It's 12:30 Eastern time. If the Bearcats win that, maybe we'll be hearing that march music. Maybe Houdini will slide in and say, Chuck, are we back? But as of right now, you take care of business against a team by 19 that you should have beaten by 19 on Saturday. Had they beaten them by 19 on Saturday, would things look any different? Probably not. But that's the most unfortunate, frustrating part of the season. Jekyll and Hyde, you see it 4 days apart. Saturday against Oklahoma State, Tuesday against the same Oklahoma State team. What in the hell has happened to our beloved Cincinnati Bearcats? Final thoughts of the way on the road.
I just good win today, but it's hard to either be happy about the win against Oklahoma State or be upset with the way that they finished the season in the last 2 regular season games. What could have been if they just took care of business against 2 bad teams, Kansas State and Oklahoma State. It's mixed feelings today, Chuck. I don't know how to feel.
It's prep. It's essentially what we did in the American when you'd beat East Carolina, you'd beat Tulane under John Brannon or Wes Miller's first year, whatever. You had to win those games. Then you have the opportunity to go into Houston or to go into Memphis and pick up that statement win. The difference is UC's got to get 4 in a row, and they're all going to be against good teams. Much better than Oklahoma State. But we thought this was going to be a good team. We still believe in some of these players individually. They have no pressure. I mean, we buried this team like 2 months ago. They've taken all the heat they can possibly take. It's not going to get any worse from the fan base than it already is. So at the end of the day, just go out there and play. Go out there and play, and let's see who wants to be back in a Bearcats uniform next year. But to anyone that said Dillon Mitchell is not a Bearcat and doesn't fight, 18, 15, and 5 against a Big 12 team, you do not give up on Dillon Mitchell. Way too much talent. You just don't do it. So we'll talk about the roster moving forward. But hey, man, 19-point win, 87 points on the board. At least one more win as the Cincinnati Bearcats improve to 18-14 on the season. They're going to end up going on a run in this tournament. They're going to win a couple in the Crown, and they're going to end up having 22 wins. And you're going to be like, that Cincinnati team won 22 games? No, they won 17 and then, won some tourney games. But that's all I got in E-House. Quick little show. We will talk to you after the Iowa State game on Tuesday. That's at 12:30. We may do a late show like we did tonight. Or if the Bearcats win, maybe we just, in suit and ties, pop on middle of the day.
Might have to, Chuck. I mean, if they win, that's Wes Miller's top 3 win for him. Might be.
The crazy thing is, if they win, I still am not going to be like fired up. It's like, okay, I'm intrigued, but I'm not fired up because the win will truly do nothing. And that's what's so sad about it, that you could win a game in your conference tournament against Iowa State with a really good non-conference, at least in terms of beating the teams that were on the schedule, and somehow, some way, you're in this position. Nick Niehaus, Chuck Walter, this is Chatterbox Bearcats. We will see you after Iowa State, and hopefully the show will go on. Peace, everyone.